hair because he wanted to look older.
And a touch of dignity.
Spoiler alert. Sean's gonna break down.
Yeah, you fucking guys. No, I'm trying to.
I love you guys.
I think.
Well, this is the sad occasion. This is the last Star Trek in the Dorkness.
As somebody who's done my sampling of Next Generation, I feel like Next Generation is more of an ensemble, whereas the original show is really about.
Okay. If you guys can watch the documentaries about Star Trek and Star Trek fans, I recommend you do
Trekkies?
so.
Can you give us a list?
Trekkies is one of them. Trekkies 2
Trekkies
also
2?
is one of them. It's a lot of fun.
Are those on Netflix?
Trek Nation. Yeah, there are a ton on Netflix.
Okay.
For one thing,
there's
William Shatner's.
In for this.
There's William Shatner's The Captains.
I heard about that
there's
one.
There's The Captains by William Shatner, and then there's Get a Life by William Shatner. And Get a Life is specifically about the conventions. And what's funny about that is Rob and I have been to 2 conventions. One of them is the main Star Trek convention in Las Vegas that they do every year, and that's a big deal.
Right.
And the second one we went to was the Austin Comic-Con, which had the entire original, well, not Denise Crosby, but the entire Next Generation cast together for the first time in however many years
since the last time.
And so it was a huge deal,
right?
And we saw a lot of the same people that we saw at the
attendees.
Yeah, like fans. Like there's one, and
these are like people who follow the Grateful Dead or follow
exactly.
The Grateful
Like
Dead.
there was a lady who has a remote controlled Horta.
Yeah.
What?
And she just she kind of just goes around.
That's amazing.
I know, and I would not be surprised if we saw her at the Dallas Comic-Con. I would not be surprised.
My ticket. Are you coming to Dallas?
Oh yeah. It's his birthday.
Oh yeah,
that's his birthday.
It's my birthday.
Oh, do you guys?
That's his birthday.
We always share a birthday.
Oh, I always forget that.
Do you guys want to play D&D with us that night?
Oh yeah.
Then that night?
That night. It's okay if you
because I've got to be at work the next day.
Because that's when we're playing for the first time.
How are you going to get back home?
It's
okay.
We
can discuss later. Not
we can talk about it later.
So if you guys can watch those documentaries, it really kind of helps to understand.
Frame it. Frame the discussion.
In Trek Nation, that was the documentary that was made by Gene Roddenberry's son, Gene Roddenberry Jr., who goes by Rod.
GRJ.
Of course.
He made it to try to understand his father better, which, interesting tidbit of information, Gene Roddenberry was a notorious coon hound.
I think we'd heard some hints of this. So was Majel, his father, Majel Roddenberry?
Yes.
Nurse Chapel is Rod's dad. Okay.
In
he was
the documentary,
he was also banging Uhura, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At one point, yes.
Nice.
In fact, I couldn't help but wonder when we were watching. What is the name of that episode?
Dallas Destroyed.
I couldn't help. The Green Girl.
I was going to ask that myself.
It was so long. I wonder if he banged that chick and promised her I'll give you 5 minutes of screen time, baby.
I wouldn't have blamed him.
I like their mannerisms. But no,
it was so unnecessary.
It's true. I started checking my email during, and I was like, "This is Fox."
Okay,
so I really wonder if he banged that chick, and
or maybe they were just running short on time too.
What I was wondering is like that kind of meme, for lack of a better term, Kirk and the Green Chick, that's what that scene in the 2009 movie. Kirk was banging the Green Chick, it's Kirk and the Green Chick, woo! That fan service type thing. Is that the episode where it came from, or is it
such a
the Menagerie?
But that's Pike. That's not Kirk.
Oh, right. But that's the first time we see an Orion.
Yeah. But
that
and
kind of became
just
a staple of the original Trek universe. Is the Green Chick.
Okay, so I mean, it's this is the closest he Kirk himself gets to a Green Chick, and I was like,
I think there might be something to Mary Beth's theory about Gene the Peen boning the Green Girl, because
Gene the Peen boning the Green.
In those early episodes, Uhura sings every other episode.
Not every. She sings twice, dude.
A lot.
Trek Nation. This is mentioned in Trek Nation. Her background was musical theater.
I mean, she's got a beautiful voice.
She wanted to leave the show after the first season.
And the good Dr. King.
The doctor talked
to my sister. You cannot leave the Star Trek.
It was.
I love that show.
Yeah,
it was a big deal.
It really was.
I do a great Dr. King.
That's more of a Jesse
All over
Jackson
Disney.
than Martin Luther King.
That's kind of racist.
No, it's not.
It's distinctly King.
So it's important to keep in mind when you're
Pretty good.
watching
I
these
thought it
third
was. I think
season
you should play.
episodes is,
YouTube.
you know,
Fry
it was
burgers.
supposed to be 5 seasons,
Right.
but they were going to cancel it after 2.
Right.
And
the letter
writing campaign saved it. But when they brought it back, they put it on Friday nights
The death
at like
slot.
10
Yeah.
o'clock.
have a dream.
And that's
when
when
their kids would be in bed or out.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like this was before VCRs, DVRs. No one
iTunes,
was
Hulu.
watching TV.
Yeah.
At
10
10
o'clock
o'clock
at
on
night.
Friday.
And so that's when Roddenberry was like, I don't give a fuck. And he stopped caring. He stopped supervising the show. And that's why there's such a dramatic difference from the first 2 seasons, from the
This is
third
lightning.
season. And then when they brought it back for the next generation, he had like this really weird requirement. He just wanted it to be about the stories, the episodes, not about the characters. He did not want character development
That's
at
so
all.
weird.
It is weird. And then I think the 3rd or 4th season is when he passed away.
That's right.
And the show
And
starts
that's-
getting dramatically
Exactly.
better.
And that's when they started doing character development. And that was when, not saying that the show wasn't good, but that was when
Is
it
that when
became
Ron
more
Moore
interesting.
came on? Because
Yes.
Ronald Moore was a big factor in Star Trek before he went to
I think he
Battlestar.
was he was writing for the show, but I don't think he,
He was a
as
showrunner.
influential.
As he was
it
on
was
Deep
Rick
Space
Berman
Nine.
who really ran the
Right.
show.
But didn't they end up running the franchise into the ground, Brandon and Braga,
Yes.
in the
Yes.
later years? Because they were the ones who wouldn't spend the money on the movies and stuff, which is why the movies for Next Gen are so
And brought in
slow.
writers who didn't give a shit.
Right. When I was in high school, I read a book by Shatner called Star Trek Movie Memories, and he talked about how Roddenberry was
read that too.
basically
Didn't you get that book?
I think I did.
he was basically edged out of the movie process after the first movie. Roddenberry had this grand. He didn't want
Well,
to
that's
have
because
a human,
the first movie tanked.
it didn't tank. It just kind of broke even. It didn't do the business they wanted for the money it made. And Roddenberry wanted this very progressive, sort of futuristic idea where they weren't fighting people, and he didn't want villains. He didn't want actual villains. And basically, he also had this really crazy idea about how Spock was going to kill JFK. He wanted to do a time travel story. And there's this recurring
He was
theme.
the second gunman on the grassy knoll.
Yes, that they to maintain the time flow, Spock had to kill JFK, and every time they did a sequel, Roddenberry's got a creative consultant credit,
Hey, we can
and
always
which
do that
meant he was
JFK
allowed
thing.
to pitch stories. And every time he would pitch that same story for 2 through whenever he died. And when they did Star Trek 4, which is a time travel story, he wrote him a note saying, "Finally, you're on the right track," and submitted the same thing again.
I would see that episode.
It's so sad because you think about it, and it's like the guy who envisioned this thing.
He's an ideas man, really. I mean,
Yeah, he wasn't necessarily because he doesn't exactly. He's like Job, the Job Bluth of Star Trek.
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene the mean, lean coon
Well,
machine.
he's only got 2 writing credits on Star Trek, right? He wrote The Menagerie, and I think he wrote maybe 2 or 3 others. His name isn't really on a lot of the teleplays. So anyway,
I always wonder, because there's obviously a writing room, so I always wonder, how
involved he is.
exactly, or any writer, any producer with their shows, surely they must be involved
Right.
a great deal in
Yeah,
some
you would
way,
think.
but
I
only
guess-
1, 2, 3 people get credit
Writing
for
credit.
writing an episode. So I always wonder exactly. how
Right,
that works.
right. On Community, you can tell Dan Harmon in those first 3 seasons has lines in every one. You can,
Yeah.
Once you know his voice.
Tina Fey with 30
Yeah.
Rock. you can
Exactly.
tell,
30 Rock.
Or Joss Whedon, any of his TV shows, you can hear his voice in every episode.
His voice.
Well, he has a very
A
specific,
very beautiful voice.
He does.
Anybody,
Anyway.
any other episodes that want to be discussed?
Devil in the Dark. Didn't you have another one you wanted to talk about, or was it only?
Well,
Devil
just
in-
a mock time.
Oh, okay.
And I rewatched it today, actually,
mock
just
time.
to
Doesn't
kinda,
hold up.
Well,
I remember
the
watching.
thing that strikes me I think I
Say
might
it.
have missed
That's the
you
one
guys'
where Spock gets real
podcast
horny.
about
Yeah.
it because
Yeah.
for the life of me I can't
I was going
remember
to try
what
and
you
describe
guys
the
said about it.
episode, barely remembering it. That's how I could do it.
No, say whatever your thoughts
Well,
are.
I mean,
It doesn't matter if you're repeating.
Yeah,
it.
I'll click the explicit content button when I post this. So fucking.
Where you're gonna have to.
Whatever.
You know,
Say
obviously,
whatever.
like, it's so funny that these people who are obviously known for, like, oh, we're logical, we only do logical things, but now you have to fight to the death.
Well, I think
like that.
I think the Vulcans are a great example of emotional repression, at least in the original series, because it's always there under the surface. It's not that it's not there; it's that they don't acknowledge it.
Yes,
it's there, dude. And Bones is
and
forever
like
trying to fuck
emotions,
Spock's day.
They just deny.
They're only allowed to let them out during certain periods.
Well,
I don't know.
the guy who invented the cell phone, like, he invented that based on the Star Trek communicator.
Well, did he really?
Yes.
Star Trek is so important.
Star Trek.
There's a documentary called "How William Shatner Changed the World," only because they couldn't get the licensing rights to say how Star Trek changed the world. But yeah, it's basically just examples of Star Trek basically engineers being like, I think we can actually do that.
You know, and that's a good point, because even though the science in Star Trek a lot of times is baloney, the fact that there's always a scientific explanation behind things, and that's one of the things that the hardcore fans don't like about the Abrams movie, at least the first one, is that it trucks in destiny and, you know,
and fate and luck, just fucking
right.
Like
Exactly.
like Spock happens to be on the fucking planet that Kirk like crash lands on.
The first Star Trek movie, it to me feels more like it belongs with the Star Wars prequels than it belongs in the Star Trek universe.
Interesting.
Like just the focus on action. And,
Right. But I think there's a lot of great character work in the 2009 Star Trek. That's what I would stand up for. I rewatched it recently, and I was like, this is a really effective piece of entertainment. But I would agree, it feels more Star Wars than Star Trek.
I think the Uhura character in the 2009 movie is more interesting.
I agree.
What with the linguistics, basically, like they were like, well, this is why this person exists. You
exactly.
know, like
but she's a genius at what she does.
Exactly.
Why she's a communications
that more
officer
than the original series.
Right. And I also liked a reason for Chekhov to be there. That was pretty nice.
Yes.
Other than the fact that they needed the monkeys audience.
They wanted that teeny bopper audience.
Exactly. That he has, and that's one of the things I think the movie actually does very well, is they give you a specific reason all of these people should be here and why they're all special. Like, every one of them gets their moment. All 7 of the main crew gets their moment.
There's so many moments in that movie. Like, I went to go see it opening night, and I really enjoyed it. But I remember watching it
in the theaters
when it opened, and like the scene where he's taking the Kobayashi Maru test and he's eating the apple.
Yeah.
I was so mad. I was like, why is he eating an apple? That is so stupid. But then I took my mother to see the movie, which is kind of a big deal because she hates going to the movies.
Did she like it?
She liked it a great deal, actually.
So did my mom.
But the thing is I waited a long time to take her to the movie because I wanted the theater to be mostly clear.
I hear you.
But it was still full.
Uh-oh.
And
that movie
so,
had legs.
Like that, I think that speaks to the movie. Like, I took her to the earliest showing, like a month and a half after it was released, and it was still a packed house.
It's a lot of fun.
That was when I realized the reason he's eating an apple was because in Wrath of Khan, when he was talking about taking the Kobayashi Maru, he was eating an apple.
Oh.
That's right.
And like, I realized it in the
Spoiler
theater,
alert.
and like
I haven't seen it.
Like, I exclaimed, and I was like, oh! And I was like,
and everyone was like, shh.
I will say that rewatching the movie, I watched it again last week or 2 weeks ago. After having watched most of the series, I got a lot more out of it, actually. Like, there are lots of little callbacks.
I think it captures the original spirit and also makes it more accessible to today's audience.
Yeah.
For sure, definitely.
I wish it had more on its mind. And I'm hoping in the sequels they'll go more into ideas. Because that's one thing Trek
like,
always
what is
had.
real horror?
Yes, what is real horror? But, like, you know, what is man's relationship with machinery, things like that. Like, because the original show was very idea-based. And I assume the other ones are to some degree, too. I don't know. And that's the one thing I'm hoping that I don't know if they'll do it in this movie so much, but maybe as they go down the road that they'll kind of start heading back that way.
When those shows were first on, I wonder, you know, in Devil in the Dark, when those spheres were eggs, we knew that, like, I don't know, I think because we've seen so much, we've been exposed to so much, I think like by this point we know like we can figure things out, and we like.
We don't need simple, hand-handed ideas.
Rob and I just watched 3 episodes of Game of Thrones yesterday, and because of the way a couple of the episodes were structured, we kind of figured